5 reasons why chosen ones secretly struggle with lust. Listen to me. This message is for the ones who feel the weight of their calling but secretly wrestle with desires they don't dare to confess. You walk with an anointing, but behind closed doors, you battle temptations that no one sees. You are not alone. The chosen ones often face the greatest struggles because the enemy knows if he can bind your mind, he can block your destiny. When you are chosen for a higher purpose, you feel a constant pull between two forces: the spirit that longs to rise and the flesh that refuses to die. It is a battle that rages within, an internal war between what you know is right and what your desires crave. This struggle is not a sign of failure. It is a sign of transformation. The moment you step into your calling, the flesh doesn't disappear. It fights harder. It resists. It clings to what is familiar. And that is why so many chosen ones secretly struggle with lust. Lust is not just about physical temptation. It is about control. It is the flesh's desperate attempt to keep you tied to the earthly realm, to distract you from the divine. The spirit seeks alignment with purpose, but the flesh seeks gratification in the present moment. The spirit longs for elevation, but the flesh drags you back into patterns of indulgence, guilt, and secrecy. This war is exhausting because it is not just a one-time battle. It is daily, relentless, and unyielding. Chosen ones experience this struggle more intensely because their spiritual sensitivity is heightened. You don't just see the surface, you feel the depth of your choices. You recognize the weight of your actions. What others may brush off as normal, you carry as a burden. What others engage in without a second thought, you wrestle with in the quiet of your mind. There is a deep awareness that you are meant for more, but that doesn't make the desires vanish. It only makes the fight more intense. The enemy knows this, and he exploits it. He understands that if he cannot strip you of your calling, he will attempt to weaken your resolve. He will not attack you in obvious ways. He will be subtle. He will use your own thoughts against you. He will plant seeds of temptation when you are tired, when you are lonely, when you are frustrated. He will whisper that it's just a moment, that it won't mean anything, that you can always repent later. But what he won't tell you is that every time you surrender to the flesh, it strengthens its grip. It reinforces a pattern. It builds a cycle that becomes harder to break. For chosen ones, this battle is not just about resisting temptation. It is about identity. It is about deciding who you will serve, who you will become, and what will have dominion over your life. The spirit and the flesh cannot co-rule. One will always submit to the other. The question is, which one will you feed? The more you entertain the desires of the flesh, the more authority it gains. The more you nourish the spirit, the stronger it becomes. There is also an added layer to this struggle: shame. Because you are chosen, because you are called, you feel like you should not be dealing with this at all. You feel like this should have been conquered by now, so instead of seeking help, you hide it. Instead of confronting it, you suppress it. But silence does not kill the battle. It only gives it more power. The secrecy of the struggle makes it more dangerous because what remains in the dark continues to grow. The flesh will never willingly surrender. It must be put under submission. It must be disciplined, trained, and denied. But denial does not mean pretending the desires don't exist. It means acknowledging them and deciding that they will not control you. It means recognizing that the war is real, but refusing to be a casualty. One of the greatest burdens of being chosen is the reality of isolation. You are set apart, not because you want to be, but because your calling demands it. People don't always understand you. Friends drift away. Relationships become complicated. You find yourself walking a path that others cannot relate to. And over time, loneliness settles in like an unwelcome guest. It's in these moments of isolation that temptation begins to whisper. Lust preys on loneliness. It disguises itself as comfort, as relief, as something that will make the silence more bearable. When no one is around to affirm you, to check on you, or to remind you of your worth, temptation becomes louder. It tells you that a moment of indulgence will make the emptiness go away. It offers itself as an escape from the weight of solitude. And because the struggle is hidden, because no one sees what you wrestle with in private, it feels easier to give in. Chosen ones are often misunderstood. You can be surrounded by people and still feel alone. You can be in a crowd and still feel unseen. That's because your journey is different. You carry something others do not. And that difference creates distance. It separates you from the ordinary. It sets you apart for something greater, but it also makes you more vulnerable. When isolation becomes unbearable, the flesh starts searching for a way to feel connected again, even if that connection is fleeting and false. Lust doesn't just attack in moments of weakness, it thrives in emotional vulnerability. When you feel rejected, temptation presents itself as acceptance. When you feel unseen, it offers attention. When you feel empty, it promises fulfillment. But the satisfaction it brings is never real, never lasting. It is a counterfeit solution to a deeper issue. The enemy knows this, which is why he doesn't attack the chosen ones with obvious destruction. He uses subtle distractions. He places something tempting in your path when you're feeling the most alone. He plants a thought, an image, a memory, a suggestion. And before you realize it, your mind is engaged in a battle you never intended to fight. For many chosen ones, the struggle with lust isn't just about physical desire. It's about the need for connection. It's about filling a void that isolation has created. When you are called to a higher level, your relationships change. The people you used to rely on may not be there anymore. The conversations that once brought you joy may no longer satisfy. The old friendships, the past distractions, the places where you once found comfort, they no longer fit who you are becoming. But in that transition, in that space between who you were and who you are becoming, the temptation to seek comfort in the wrong places becomes even greater. The silence of isolation can be deafening. When the noise of life quiets down, when there are no texts, no calls, no one checking in, that is when the mind begins to wander. That is when thoughts you thought you conquered start creeping back in. That is when temptation starts looking like a solution instead of a problem. The enemy waits for these moments. He waits until you are alone, until you are exhausted, until you are mentally and emotionally drained. Because in those moments, resistance feels harder. The desire for companionship overshadows the warning signs. And slowly, temptation doesn't seem like a threat, it starts feeling like a relief. Chosen ones often struggle with relationships. You don't settle easily because you know your worth. You don't engage in surface-level connections because your spirit craves depth. But that depth, that standard also means you encounter seasons of isolation, and in those seasons, if you are not careful, temptation will try to convince you that settling for temporary pleasure is better than waiting for something real. It will try to persuade you that a moment of escape is better than enduring the loneliness. The hardest part of being chosen is knowing that you cannot take shortcuts to your destiny. You cannot fill spiritual voids with carnal solutions. You cannot escape your calling by entertaining distractions. The more isolated you feel, the stronger the temptation becomes. And because no one sees your struggle, because no one understands the battles you fight in private, the weight of it all feels even heavier. Being chosen comes with an expectation, an invisible standard that looms over every decision you make. People look at you differently. They expect you to be stronger, wiser, and more disciplined. They assume that because you are called, you no longer struggle. They admire your strength but do not see your battles. They honor your wisdom but do not witness your moments of weakness. And this pressure, the weight of always having to be righteous, creates an internal conflict that many chosen ones carry in silence. Lust is not just about desire, it is about relief. It is about finding an outlet for the pressure that never seems to let up. When you are constantly trying to be the example, when people come to you for guidance, when you are the one pouring into others, you often have no place to release your own struggle. You are expected to be the strong one, the disciplined one, the one who never falls. And that expectation, whether spoken or unspoken, becomes a burden. Chosen ones wrestle with lust because the pressure to be perfect leaves no room for imperfection. The moment you recognize your own struggles, shame follows. The moment you acknowledge your weaknesses, doubt creeps in. You start questioning whether you are truly called. You wonder if your struggles disqualify you. You begin to feel like an imposter, leading others while secretly battling your own temptations. And because admitting the struggle feels like failure, you suppress it. You pretend it doesn't exist. You carry it in silence, hoping that if you ignore it long enough, it will disappear. But silence does not weaken temptation, it strengthens it. What remains hidden continues to grow. The more you suppress, the more it demands attention. And because chosen ones are often in positions of leadership, the struggle is magnified. The enemy knows that if he can make you stumble, he can shake the faith of those who look up to you. He knows that if he can keep you bound in secrecy, he can keep you from seeking help. He understands that your isolation makes you more vulnerable, and so he waits, strategically placing temptation in moments of exhaustion, frustration, or loneliness. There is a unique kind of exhaustion that comes with being chosen. It is not just physical tiredness, it is spiritual weariness. It is the fatigue of always fighting, always resisting, always trying to stay strong when everything in you wants to collapse. And in those moments, lust presents itself as relief. It tells you that you deserve a moment of escape. It convinces you that giving in just once won't hurt. It manipulates your exhaustion, turning it into justification. The more you fight to maintain righteousness, the more intense the struggle becomes. The flesh does not give up easily. It does not care that you are chosen. It does not care that you have a calling. It only cares about being satisfied. It only cares about controlling you. And when you are exhausted, when the weight of responsibility feels unbearable, that is when temptation speaks the loudest. The struggle is also intensified by the fear of exposure. Chosen ones feel an overwhelming sense of responsibility, not just for themselves, but for those they lead, those who look up to them, those who rely on them for strength. The fear of failing in front of others becomes paralyzing. The thought of disappointing people, of losing respect, of being seen as weak, keeps many chosen ones trapped in a cycle of secrecy. You don't want to be judged. You don't want to be labeled a hypocrite. And so instead of confronting the battle, you carry it alone. But carrying it alone does not make it disappear. It only makes the struggle more dangerous. The pressure of righteousness should not become a prison, but for many chosen ones it does. It creates an illusion that you must always be strong, that admitting your struggles makes you unworthy, that failing, even in private, means you are not truly called. This pressure pushes many into deeper temptation because the more you feel like you must hide, the more powerful the temptation becomes. There is no struggle more intense, more unrelenting than the war between spirit and flesh. The moment you were chosen, this battle became your reality. Your spirit longs for righteousness, for purpose, for a life that is in alignment with your calling, but your flesh craves satisfaction, indulgence, and immediate pleasure. These two forces do not coexist peacefully. They are constantly at war. And the more you grow spiritually, the more aggressive the flesh becomes in its attempts to regain control. Lust is one of the oldest and most powerful weapons of the flesh. It is not just a desire, it is a hunger, an unquenchable thirst that disguises itself as harmless curiosity. It starts as a thought, a fleeting temptation, a small compromise. But the moment it is entertained, it grows. It demands more. It convinces you that control is still in your hands, that you can stop whenever you want, that it's not that serious. But lust is deceptive. It does not reveal its true intention until it has gained power. Chosen ones experience this battle more intensely than others because their spiritual awareness is heightened. The closer you are to your purpose, the more you recognize the weight of your action. You feel conviction stronger than most. You understand the dangers of temptation on a deeper level, and yet, despite that awareness, the flesh does not ease its attacks. In fact, it fights even harder. Because it knows that if it can break you, if it can keep you distracted, if it can weaken your spiritual discipline, then it can delay or even destroy the work you were meant to do. The battle between spirit and flesh is exhausting. It is not a one-time fight. It is daily, sometimes even moment by moment. There are days when the spirit is stronger, when resistance feels effortless, when the mind is focused and the flesh is silent. But then there are days when the flesh roars louder, when the body demands what the spirit rejects, when the temptation feels almost impossible to resist. And in those moments, the chosen ones feel the weight of their calling the most. This struggle is magnified by the reality that the flesh does not fight fair. It does not attack when you are at full strength. It waits until you are tired, discouraged, lonely, or emotionally drained. It waits until your defenses are down, until you are questioning your own ability to remain disciplined, and when the moment is right, it strikes. It presents lust not as sin, but as relief. It whispers that you deserve a break from the pressure, that indulging just this once won't affect your destiny. The flesh is manipulative. It does not just use physical desire. It uses emotions, memories, past experiences, and even unresolved wounds. It reminds you of the comfort you once found in lust. It replays moments of pleasure, making them seem more fulfilling than they truly were. It creates a longing, an illusion that what it offers is better than what God has planned. It blinds you from seeing the consequences, keeping your focus only on the temporary satisfaction it provides. For the chosen ones, this battle is especially frustrating because they know better. They know the cost. They have seen how lust has destroyed others. They understand the consequences. And yet, knowing does not always mean overcoming. Because this fight is not just about knowledge. It is about surrender. It is about learning to deny the flesh even when every part of you wants to give in. This war is not just personal, it is spiritual. The enemy does not use lust randomly. He uses it strategically. He knows that chosen ones are called to be leaders, to influence others, to carry a message that can transform lives. And so he does not try to destroy them with obvious sins. He uses subtle ones. He uses temptations that feel natural, urges that seem harmless, thoughts that appear to be pride, because he knows that if he can weaken the chosen ones in secret, he can rob them of their power in public. The flesh does not just crave lust, it craves control. It does not want to be ruled by the Spirit. It wants to be the ruler. And so it fights. It fights through desires, through urges, through thoughts that appear suddenly and without warning. It fights through moments of exhaustion, through loneliness, through unresolved pain. And if the chosen ones are not vigilant, if they are not constantly strengthening their spirit, the flesh will win. The most dangerous thing about this battle is that it never truly ends. It is not a fight that can be won once and for all. It is a daily war, a constant struggle to remain disciplined, to remain focused, to remain in alignment with purpose. It requires awareness, discipline, and most importantly, a willingness to surrender control, not to the flesh, but to the spirit. One of the greatest challenges of being chosen is the loneliness that comes with it. The path of the anointed is not crowded. It is not filled with companionship and constant support. Instead, it is often marked by solitude, seasons of isolation, and moments where it feels like no one truly understands what you are going through. And in that isolation, lust becomes one of the greatest temptations. Lust is not just about physical desire. It is about filling an emotional void. It offers a counterfeit version of connection, a temporary escape from the weight of loneliness. When you are chosen, people admire you. They celebrate your strength. They seek your wisdom. but they rarely see your vulnerability. They see the leader, the motivator, the one who speaks life into others, but they do not see the moments when you need someone to speak life into you. And when you carry that burden alone, lust begins to whisper that it can fill the emptiness. The chosen ones often struggle with lust because they do not always have a safe space to be weak. They do not have many people they can confide in, people who will listen without judgment, people who will remind them that their struggle does not define them. And so instead of expressing that need for connection in a healthy way, it gets redirected. Lust becomes a secret refuge, a momentary relief from the weight of always having to be strong. Isolation makes the battle even more dangerous because it removes accountability. When no one is watching, when no one is checking in, when no one sees the silent struggle, temptation has a greater chance of succeeding. The enemy knows this, which is why he often uses isolation as a setup. He removes distractions, cuts off meaningful connections, and places the chosen ones in positions where their only company is their own thoughts. And in that silence, the mind begins to wander. The desires begin to intensify. The temptation begins to look more appealing. Lust thrives in secrecy. It grows in the shadows, in the moments when no one is looking, in the spaces where there is no immediate consequence. And because chosen ones are often isolated, they battle this struggle behind closed doors. They carry the weight of their calling in public, but fight their temptations in private. And over time, this can lead to a cycle of resistance, failure, shame, and silence. They resist as long as they can, but when loneliness becomes unbearable, they fall. And after falling, shame keeps them from seeking help, and because they do not seek help, they continue to struggle in silence. Chosen ones are not exempt from human needs. They still crave connection, affection, and intimacy, but because their path requires a higher level of discipline, they often suppress these needs rather than confronting them. And what is suppressed does not disappear, it finds another way to surface. Many do not realize that lust is not just about sexual desire. It is about unmet emotional needs. It is about the longing to be seen, to be understood, to be comforted. And when those needs go unmet for long periods, lust presents itself as the easiest solution. The struggle becomes even more intense because chosen ones cannot afford to be reckless with their emotions. They cannot give their hearts away carelessly. They cannot form just any relationship. They must be selective, discerning, cautious. And while this is necessary, it also increases their sense of isolation. It makes them feel as if there is no one they can truly trust, no one who can handle their weaknesses without losing respect for their strength. And so instead of seeking genuine connection, they find themselves drawn to counterfeit versions, quick fixes, temporary pleasures, moments that feel fulfilling but ultimately leave them emptier than before. The enemy knows that chosen ones are at their weakest when they are isolated. He knows that when they feel alone, they are more vulnerable. And so he magnifies that loneliness. He convinces them that no one will understand their struggle, that no one can handle their truth. He tells them that admitting their battles will make them look weak, that it will discredit their calling, that it will cause people to lose faith in them, and so they stay silent. They suffer in secrecy. They allow the struggle to grow unchecked. This isolation creates a dangerous cycle where lust becomes a false comfort. It becomes the thing they use to fill the empty spaces that were meant to be filled with purpose. It becomes a substitute for what they truly need: authentic connection, spiritual strength, and emotional healing. But because they are chosen, because they carry the weight of being an example, they do not always feel like they can admit this struggle. And so they continue to battle it in the dark, hoping that no one ever finds out. The chosen ones do not struggle with lust simply because they are weak. They struggle because they are strong. They carry a divine calling, a purpose that has the power to shift atmospheres, break generational curses, and lead people into transformation. And because of that, they are a direct threat to the enemy's agenda. The enemy does not waste time attacking those who are already lost. He focuses on those who are dangerous to his plans. And one of his greatest weapons against the chosen is lust. Lust is not just a desire, it is a trap. It is a carefully designed strategy meant to weaken the strong, distract the focused, and entangle the anointed in something that can discredit their testimony. It is not a coincidence that some of the greatest leaders, the most gifted individuals, and the most powerful visionaries have fallen to lust. The enemy does not fight fair. He studies his targets, learns their weaknesses, and waits for the perfect moment to strike. And for the chosen ones, lust is often his most effective weapon. The enemy understands something that many chosen ones fail to realize. Lust is not just about pleasure, it is about power. If he can get you entangled in lust, he can strip you of your confidence. He can make you doubt yourself, silence your voice, and keep you so consumed with guilt that you no longer walk boldly in your calling. He does not need to destroy you completely. He just needs to keep you distracted. He just needs to make sure you are not fully present, not fully focused, not fully surrendered to your purpose. Because a distracted chosen one is just as ineffective as a fallen one. The enemy's attacks are not random. He does not use the same level of temptation on everyone. He tailors his approach based on the magnitude of your assignment. The greater your calling, the more intense the warfare. He knows that if he can keep you bound in secret struggles, you will never fully walk in the freedom and authority that was meant for you. And so, he sends temptations that feel irresistible. He waits until you are in a vulnerable place. He manipulates your emotions, stirs up your past, and presents opportunities that seem too convenient to be a coincidence. Because he knows that if you fall into the trap, he can use that fall to keep you trapped in cycles of shame and secrecy. Lust is one of the few battles that does not just attack the mind, it attacks the soul. It does not just leave you feeling guilty, it leaves you feeling disconnected. It creates distance between you and your purpose, between you and your power, between you and your identity. The chosen ones often struggle with lust because they carry an anointing that the enemy is desperate to neutralize. And if he cannot stop them through external opposition, he will try to defeat them through internal compromise. This struggle is especially dangerous because lust does not always present itself as something evil. It often disguises itself as love, as comfort, as a natural part of being human. It convinces the chosen ones that as long as they are not hurting anyone, as long as they are still walking in their calling, as long as no one knows, then it is not really a problem. But the enemy does not need an immediate downfall. He is patient. He will allow the struggle to continue quietly, growing in the background, until one day it has enough power to shake the very foundation of what was being built. The enemy knows that chosen ones are held to a higher standard. He knows that their influence is not just about them, it is about everyone connected to them. He understands that if he can make them fall, it does not just affect them personally. It affects their followers, their families, their assignments, and their legacy. He does not need to destroy them publicly. He just needs to keep them struggling privately, because a chosen one who is battling in secret will never be as effective as one who is walking in full freedom. The chosen ones are dangerous to the enemy's kingdom, and that is why the warfare is so intense. That is why the struggle is so persistent. That is why lust feels like an unshakable battle. Because the enemy knows that if they ever break free, if they ever truly overcome this fight, they will step into a level of authority that he cannot stop. He knows that once they recognize his tactics, once they refuse to be bound by shame, once they fully surrender their weaknesses to divine strength, they will be unstoppable. And so he fights with everything he has, using one of the most ancient and powerful weapons at his disposal: lust. The struggle with lust is not a sign of weakness, it is proof that you carry something powerful. The enemy does not attack the ordinary, he targets the chosen. He knows that if he can keep you bound in secret battles, He can keep you from fully walking in your divine purpose. But you must understand this. You were never meant to fight this battle alone. The enemy thrives in secrecy, but breakthrough happens in the light. Lust is not just about desire, it is about distraction, about compromise, about keeping you from being the person you were created to be. But you have a choice. You can either allow the struggle to define you, or you can rise above it. You can either remain bound by shame, or you can step into freedom. The calling on your life is too great. The impact you are meant to have is too powerful, and the destiny ahead of you is too important to be sabotaged by a temporary battle. It is time to break the cycle. It is time to confront what has been controlling you. It is time to reclaim your authority, stand in your true identity, and refuse to be manipulated by an enemy who knows how powerful you really are. You were not chosen to be defeated. You were chosen to overcome.